phrase that I use is that in therapy, women need safety, but men need respect. And I think our education, especially the modern therapy education, call it the past 30, 40 years, has been built around building safety. But when you tell a man that therapy is a safe space, he immediately is going to cringe. A lot of men, being that we come from a privileged class, right? Like, we are the safest people on planet Earth. So safety isn't really what we're attracted to. What we're attracted to is respect. And modern therapy education doesn't teach therapists how to build respect from their clients.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. For the past 20 plus years, I've been working in the mental health field as a licensed therapist, private practice owner, coach, and consultant. And I've learned a lot the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi there, I'm Gordon Brewer, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your practice, or looking for fresh inspiration, this podcast is here to support you in your journey. Each week, we explore the real-world challenges and opportunities that come with building and growing your private practice. From marketing and money management to ethics, client care, and self-care, we cover it all. You'll hear from leading experts, seasoned clinicians, and innovative voices in the mental health and allied health fields, all sharing their insights and strategies to help you thrive in your practice. So let's jump in and get to today's episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 409 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm your host, Gordon Brewer, and so glad you've joined me in this particular episode. Today's guest is Marc Azoulay, and Marc is the person behind the Men's Therapy podcast and also the person behind on mensonlinetherapy.com. And so we're going to be talking today, rather, not just a lot, but that's the whole topic of the podcast, is how doing therapy with men is different than doing therapy with women. And I think you're going to find it fascinating. And I know it's stuff that I've thought about as a male therapist, in that you do approach what you do with men in a much different way than you do with women. And I think with the majority of therapists being women, I think it's going to be interesting for you. So anyway, stay tuned for my interview with Marc. Before we get to that, though, one of the things that I'd love to maybe talk with you about or get you interested in is doing some individual consulting with me. I get a lot of questions and a lot of people asking about that, but it is something that I do. So if you'll go to my website, practiceoftherapy.com, you can find out more about how to do that and how to connect with me, and we can start the process. And one of the things that I do is just a free brainstorming session, about a 15-minute session by Zoom, so that we can see what your needs are and how that all this can fit for you. So be sure and check it out. Go to practiceoftherapy.com and you'll see a button up there for coaching and consulting. And also, before we get to my conversation with Marc, I'd love for you to hear more about our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes, along with something from one of our members of the Psychcraft network.
Hey there, I'm Aaron Potratz.
And I'm Nathan Hawkins. If you don't know us yet, we're the hosts of the Shrink Think podcast, which bridges the gap between therapists and clients.
The Shrink Think podcast is proudly part of the Psychcraft podcast network, focused on helping people live more meaningful and productive lives.
Join us every Wednesday in our engaging, informative conversations and lighthearted humor to help you normalize and demystify therapy for those beginning or continuing their mental health journey.
We discuss everything from understanding styles of therapy to addressing conflict with your counselor, learning about attachment styles, and the fear triangle. We seek to run the gamut of topics to pull back the curtain and empower effective therapy.
If you haven't listened yet, you can find us at shrinkthink.com/podcast and discover other resources, including educational videos and fun swag at our swag shop.
Hi, this is Rachel, Gordon's podcast assistant, and I want to share the platform Gordon trusts for his own practice, TherapyNotes. TherapyNotes is the highest rated EHR, practice management, and billing software for mental health professionals. It's an all-in-one system for scheduling, notes, billing, and secure client communication. And if you ever need help, their 24/7 customer service is always just a call or email away. Their latest update, Therapy Fuel, uses AI to streamline documentation, generating progress notes, creating contact notes from client messages, and even summarizing client history forms, saving therapists hours every week. Are you ready to give it a try? Head to therapynotes.com, click Start My Free Trial, and use the code GORDON to get your first 2 months free. See why TherapyNotes is the most trusted EHR and the one Gordon chooses for his practice. Please enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really happy for you to get to know Marc Azoulay today. Welcome, Marc.
Yeah, happy to be here. Really excited for
this. Yes. And so as I start with everyone, tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yeah, so my name is Marc Azoulay. I run a company called Men's Therapy Online. We do men's therapy online. That's the pitch. Very direct, very, to the point. And we offer individual groups and couples counseling. But, how I got here is probably very similar to a lot of people we've interviewed. Is I was a client for a long time. I'm in recovery from substance use. And I found, there's a long story here, but basically, long story short, I found that when I was digging underneath all my issues, right, childhood trauma, et cetera, a lot of it came down to my gender identity. That was a framework that really helped me to frame what it meant to be an adult, what it meant to be a man. I realized I had some pretty confused views about that kept myself pretty limited. The man box, I'm sure therapists out there know what I'm talking about. I think I also had good role models, but not good teachers, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I had people that I looked up to and tried to emulate, but I didn't have, education around how to get there. So I was often, plagued by perfectionism, self-sabotage, procrastination, because I felt that my ideal was unattainable. So it wasn't until really getting deep into the men's work, a lot of the stuff that was popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s from the men's movement that really woke me up to a different way of looking at masculinity, a version that is more vulnerable, that is more intimate, that, includes multitudes, and getting involved with men's work. And now, doing men's work, facilitating men's work has been really rewarding for me.
Right. And Marc, you also have a podcast, which I'm going to give a shout out to right away. So, but yeah, say a little bit about that.
Yeah, podcast is called the Men's Therapy Podcast. Again, all my branding is very direct.
Yeah, very straightforward. Yeah, that's good.
It's good for SEO.
Good.
Yeah. So the Men's Therapy Podcast has been going for about 5 years. It is topic-based. So every month we focus on a men's issue. So things like divorce, porn addiction, substance use, dating and relationships, sex and sexuality. And then we find experts to talk about that topic and provide, kind of practical tips and knowledge and education. A lot of guys, I think, are very reticent to come to therapy. So I found that they need quite a lot of rapport through the virtual world. And if we talk about, business to weave it in, right, I think having different channels where you can build rapport is really critical. So I've had guys that have been listening to my show for 2 years that then finally give me a call and join one of my groups or decide to work with us individually. So we give away a lot of our information for free. Through the podcast, we also have a free Slack channel, which is like a chat room that guys can join. So we're trying to create more accessible channels for guys to access good mental health content.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and the thing is as you've already alluded to, is that in our field as therapists, I don't know what percentage of therapists are actually male. Do you know? I mean, it's
It's
very
around
low.
10%. It's around 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right. And so I think with a lot of the people in the audience out there, they might find working with men intimidating and find it, just something that they are uncomfortable with. But, you know, I'm sure there's lots of directions we can go here, but where do you feel like is kind of the starting point in working with men? And I'm sure it all has to do with the different issues and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of a tagline that I use when I talk about this that maybe can anchor our conversation in the beginning, which is, and I got to, do the kind of disclaimer, right? I'm going to talk about men and women, gender is not tied to sex, right? I'm just going to be using kind of heteronormative terms just for simplicity of the show.
Sure.
But if people want to talk about more, edge cases and LGBTQ, I do work with queer men and they can always email me and I can have that conversation with them.
Sure.
So always got to get that out of the way. But yes, the phrase that I use is that in therapy, women need safety, but men need respect. And I think our education, especially the modern therapy education, call it the past 30, 40 years, has been built around building safety, which is not inherently a bad thing. But when you tell a man that therapy is a safe space, he immediately is going to cringe. We don't really know what that means in a lot of ways. And also a lot of men, being that we come from a privileged class, right? Like we are the safest people on planet Earth. So safety isn't really what we're attracted to. What we're attracted to is respect. And modern therapy education doesn't teach therapists how to build respect from their clients. And what I mean kind of specifically, and we can dive into more tips here, that looks like challenging your client, right? Calling them out. That looks like self-disclosing, right? Showing that you have been through something yourself and that you've overcome a difficult challenge, maybe something similar to what they've overcome. That looks like, helping them make real world change. So taking on more of actually a coaching framework, giving advice, So those three things are counter to what modern therapy training is. When a guy comes into therapy and his pain is just being validated and he's feeling safe and he's like, oh, that's so hard. A lot of guys leave therapy because we do want answers. We do want solutions. We do want to get better. We're looking for an expert, whether that be from an academic standpoint or an experiential standpoint, to help us get better in our lives. And we want results. And I think modern therapy, the way it's taught, it's very slow. And most men don't have the patience or frankly, the emotional tolerance, if you want to put it from that framework, to sit in ambivalence for too long.
Right. I found, like you, I work with a lot of men, and I think it just comes with the territory being a male therapist. But, I think you're very correct in saying, I think some self-disclosure goes a long way. And also, I think normalizing for men what they're experiencing. That just for them to understand, okay, this is not this, what you're going through is tough, but a lot of people go through this. And so there's that kind of solidarity piece, I think, to it as well.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so many men are isolated, right? I mean, you had the Surgeon General's thing in 2017 where they said that there's an epidemic of isolation. That was mainly among men and specifically around actually white privileged men is what they were studying.
Right.
Is that there's a massive loneliness epidemic where guys are living in echo chambers. And I think to this, idea of patriarchy, where patriarchy affects both men and women, is from the male lens, we're not allowed to be messy in many ways. We're not allowed to suck at something. I think once you reach a certain age, call that 25 to, 32, most men are expected to be competent at basically everything, at every category, right? At financially, career, sexually, relationships, fitness, right? We're supposed to be just crushing it on all fronts. But most guys, most humans are lagging behind on a couple of those. But as men, we hide that. We hide those deficiencies because oftentimes the culture doesn't have room to accept those. There's a lot of shame. Saying, hey, I'm not that good at this. Hey, I don't really have my finances figured out. Hey, I'm not sexually competent. Hey, I'm not relationally competent. I don't know how to handle a conflict with my partner or my spouse. So I think that normalization that you're talking about, we do it mainly through men's groups. I think men's groups are awesome, but individual therapy is also great of like, hey, it's okay to be behind on these things. And this is the most important part, right? Back to the respect piece. And I'm going to help you get better at it. right?
Yeah.
It's not about accepting that you're behind. That might be a step as long as that step helps you get better. I think a lot of men don't want to be victims, and I feel like therapy can often make them feel victimized, where it's like, oh, just accept all your flaws. Whereas I think as guys, we're like, okay, I can accept my flaws, but I want to get rid of them though. Like I want to train. I want to grow. I want to learn. I want to get better. I don't want to just be a victim.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I think too, like you said earlier, being very results oriented and goal oriented, I think it goes a long way. One question that comes to me, and I'd love to hear your take on this, Mark, is what does vulnerability look like in men?
Oh, yeah. So this is actually a really good topic because it's talked a lot about online, right? And like social media and TikTok. So kind of what I define vulnerability as is, especially emotional vulnerability, saying something and not knowing the outcome. And I tell that to my guys, because what a lot of guys do, especially when they've been in therapy for call it a year or two, is they actually weaponize intimacy. They use it as persuasion. So they will say something about themselves. They will say something about their past childhood, about their drinking problem, about their dad's anger. But they'll say like they're using it to convince their spouse often why they're not going to change, or why they need to have a lot of grace, or why they need to just like stay where they're at, and that's not vulnerability. That's using emotional intimacy as a persuasive tactic. Right. So a truly vulnerable thing is bringing something up without an agenda, not knowing how that conversation is going to go, and the most vulnerable thing a man can say, especially in the modern era, is I don't know. Right? Like I don't have an answer, or I'm lost, or I'm confused, or I don't know what's going to happen here. I think for a man to say that is really, really vulnerable, because like I was saying before, it's like we're supposed to have all the answers all the time. Right. And the minute a guy admits that he doesn't know, that he doesn't know what's going to happen, doesn't know what's next, he then opens himself to be helped and opens himself to true emotional connection, which is what we all want, but we're just so deeply, deeply afraid of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, so I'm wondering, as you've worked with other therapists just around all of this, but in particularly, if we think about the majority of therapists being women, what are some kind of tips you would say in being able to engage with a man as a female therapist?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot there. So I do whole presentations on this. I'll try to run through them, and you can add some too, of course. But sure. So the first one I think is difficult for a lot of women therapists. Okay, but let me back it up, right? So when I talk to men, right, and you probably have this experience too, right? I'll during an intake, I ask them, hey, how could I be a good therapist for you, right? Or what are you looking to get out of therapy? Some kind of question like that, right? And if you don't do that, I encourage you to do that for your clients, listeners. And by and large, most guys, call it 8 out of 10, say, I want you to call me on my bullshit. Have you heard this, right?
Yeah,
like they all say that. They all say that.
Yeah,
I want you to call me on my bullshit. And most therapists don't call people on their bullshit because we're trained to validate. Again, the novice therapist, right, is trained to validate, accept, kind of go with the flow, be client-centered. Again, all these are good things in practice. But with men, they lose respect for you. Right? They want you to call them on their bullshit. So I think for, a traditional female therapist, it can be difficult to muster up what feels like aggression, right? Which is, because of patriarchy, right? An anti-feminine trait, a trait that women have been told to suppress and not act on, and that you're going to be a bitch or whatever, right? But I think being aggressive and being forceful can be really, really helpful with men, right? Do it from a place of compassion, right? You're not there to nag them or shame them, but being like, hey, last week we talked about you having that conversation with your daughter and you didn't do it. What's that about? Rather than just being like, oh, I imagine it was difficult, and like your work was hard, and you're right, like she wasn't that available. She had soccer 3 days that week. Like, we'll try again next week, right? Like that's that safety piece. Men, we don't want that. We want someone to be like, hey, dude, you made a commitment. You broke your commitment. I'm not going to fire you, or I'm not going to reject you or abandon you, but like, let's talk about what happened. I'm not going to let you get away with this one. And we're going to figure out how to strategize so you do it next week, you know? So that's one. I'll pause there because I'm curious what you think about that, but I got more I can rattle off.
So I think it's the accountability piece. I'm just thinking about a particular male client that I have, and one of the first things he starts with me is he says, well, I did my homework, and And it's kind of like he wants that validation around, okay, I did something and I followed through on things. And yeah.
Validation around action, right? Where we're very action oriented.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's a big one. Another one, which again is, I think, difficult for women, is confronting misogyny and confronting, sexism and confronting erotic transference. And that's the whole topic right there. But most guys, especially that have not been to therapy, which is who you're seeing, right? You're seeing guys who are new. They're going to kind of project a couple things onto you, right? Either they're going to project this kind of like sexual object, and they might be like inappropriately flirty. They might be trying to impress you. They might be hiding, shitty parts of themselves because they want to appear, desirable in your eyes, right? Another thing they can project is kind of like a weak little girl, which is shitty to feel, right? But they might be in that way, they might be trying to take care of you. They might be disrespecting you. They might be like having kid gloves around you, Or the third one is a controlling mother, in which case they're going to be very defiant. They're going to be very like kind of just like shitty, like petulant, right? Is maybe a good word. So if you can understand those transferences, and I studied psychoanalysis, so I love talking about transferences. If you can understand those transferences and name them, which again takes a lot of courage, you can really break through with these men, And I think with again in a heterosexual dynamic, one of those is likely going to be active. So the work of the therapist is not to fall into those traps, not to play it up, but to name it as it's coming, because it often comes from misogyny root. I think most men, me included, right, have a version, have a thread of misogyny in us. We were raised with it. We try, the ones that are trying to work on it, we try to soften it and temper it at times, but it's there. It's, just how everyone's like a little bit racist in a way, right? So being able to name that, call that out, and work with that is going to be really critical, because if they're doing that to you, and oftentimes men come to therapy for relationship issues, they're probably doing that with their female partners in the world. But those people are not telling them what's happening, right? They're just leaving. So as a therapist, you can actually dig into some of these shitty dynamics and not leave, right? Actually work through it with this person and maybe help them see a blind spot where they do think women are inferior or something, right? Or that they can't handle their emotions or whatever it is, right? I see that come up a lot in the male-female dynamic in the therapy room.
Right.
Ever notice how ads always pop up at the worst moments? When the killer's identity is about to be revealed. During that perfect meditation flow. On Amazon Music, we believe in keeping you in the moment. That's why we've got millions of ad-free podcast episodes, so you can stay completely immersed in every story, every reveal, every breath. Download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
Verbo's last-minute deals make chasing fresh mountain powder incredibly easy. With thousands of homes close to the slopes, you can get Epic Pow, Freshies, First Tracks, and more. Find last-minute deals with the last-minute filter on the app. Book a private vacation rental now at Verbo.com.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that I've seen happen also as a male therapist, but I'm assuming, and I know with some of the female therapists that I've supervised, men will challenge in an indirect way, kind of in a passive aggressive kind of way. And I think, I think the purpose of it is to kind of see, can you handle me?
Yes.
And so they'll drop a bomb of some kind, maybe some sort of big trauma, and go into graphic detail. And, they're just looking for what's the reaction. Are they going to handle this, or are they going to freak out before they can really feel like, okay, I can trust this person.
100%, right? And like just a thread on that, if a guy's coming to you, it's because he can't handle himself. So he will be reticent to share with you something that is too big for him, because he's like, well, this, like, I can't handle it, or this hurts me. Why would I share it with you? Like, if I can't handle it, there's no way you can handle it. And again, that's like a misogynistic thing, because by and large, I think women can handle a lot more emotional intensity than men.
Right.
But we'll as men, we'll keep that a secret because we don't want to hurt them, or we don't want to burden them, or we don't want to freak them out, or whatever the justification is. So that's where it comes back to that respect thing and that strength piece of being like, yeah, I can handle it. Like you mentioned self-disclosure. Hey, I've handled stuff similar in my life. having really key tools of like, okay, here's the problem. Let's pull out our toolkit. I can work with this thing. I know exactly what to apply to the situation, feeling competent, feeling confident. That's what a guy wants to see, is he wants to see strength and grounding when he shares his trauma, not empathy, right? Which again is very different than how therapists are trained.
Right.
Like I've had, I've worked with female supervisees where the guy shares his big story and the woman, was saying, hey, I was so touched. I started crying. I started, crying in the session and feeling for him. To a man, especially a man that is not emotionally intelligent, he sees that as weakness, which again is messed up. Right. It's wrong. But in that moment, he sees that as a failure, right? As, this really hurt her, or this is too heavy for her, right? Yeah. What the guy wants is like clinical precision, right? Just being like a doctor, like, okay, you have cancer. Here's your options. Here's how we work through it. You can pick A, B, C, or D, right? If you pick E, you're going to die, right? So like having like a clear level head is more what I think men are looking for in therapy. And kind of in that they hear, hey, what you're doing is like, it's not a huge deal and I know how to handle it, right? It's confidence.
Right. And I think that's especially true, and this might be, being a little stereotypical, but in the work I've done with veterans, I think that's so important because they're carrying, a lot of them, particularly if they've been in harm's way and in action, they're carrying a lot of really deep, heavy stuff. And one reason that a lot of them come to therapy is they don't know how to disclose any of that without feeling judged or feel like they're going to do more harm to somebody by sharing all of that. And so being able to kind of convey that in a very direct way, I think is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a key difference, and I can use that example as a way to illustrate it, is I think by and large, as men, we first see emotions as obstacles, and then through therapy, we can see them as information. Whereas I think most women see emotions as first chaos and then as an experience, right? As something to actually enjoy and experience and live in, right? So when a guy is sharing an emotion or sharing something and you as a female therapist get emotional, he's like, oh no, now I have to take care of her, right? He is immediately out of his own experience. He's out of his own emotions. He sees as an obstacle needs to get handled, right? You got to handle your emotions, right? And then he's taking care of you. And again, that comes often from a misogynistic place of thinking that you can't handle yourself, whatever, right? But he moves into that mode. And then there's a part of him, especially if he has an avoidant attachment of like, okay, well, I'm never going to share anything of that level of intensity again because now I have to deal with all this, right? I had to deal with this extra emotional problem in the room, right? And then through therapy, the idea is to see them not as emotions, but as information, still not as experience. I think most guys, we prefer to be just either peaceful or happy, right? Like, I don't think we want to live in our emotions in the same way that typically feminine individuals do, but we want to see them as information of like, okay, I got upset here, or I got afraid here, or I felt shame here. What does that mean I need to do next? Again, it's more action oriented, right? Like, this is a data source that I can take in, integrate, and then act on, which is just a very different way of experiencing emotions.
Yeah. It's this is fascinating. I love the way that you're framing this. I don't know that I've thought about these things, but the way you're framing it is just makes so much more sense than just thinking about the action oriented. I know in the work that I do with couples, one of the common kind of, and again, this is being very stereotypical with gender roles and that sort of thing. So, but what a lot of times happens is that the female will present a problem or present some sort of thing that's going on. And it might be that they're just wanting to vent. They just want to express what it's like for them. And where there's conflict is that the man will typically launch into solutions for that problem.
Yes.
And so then there's this conflict around, well, you don't hear me, you don't understand, and it feels like criticism coming from the man, but really all he's attempting to do is solve the problem for the woman. And so again, I'm recognizing that's a bit misogynistic as I'm saying all of that, just that cultural thing.
Yeah.
But that is
the pattern.
One of the things that,
that is the pattern, right? And to use that framework, right? It's like, yeah, the woman is sharing the emotional experience of her day, right? And what she wants is she wants the man to join her in that emotional experience. Like you said, not fix it, not solve it, not do anything. Just be with her. Just join her on this emotional journey that she went through because she loves her man and she wants him to be there, all the time, right? So, hey, that's the way she can try to like invite him into her world. Guys, we don't see that at all, right? We're like, if there are emotions, there is a problem because emotions are obstacles, right?
Right.
So like, if you're emotional about something went wrong. So like because I love you, right? As the man talking to the woman, because I love you, I'm going to help you be less emotional because I like it when I'm less emotional and I'm more level-headed and I can just do my day. So I'm going to help you be less emotional. And that common thing happens all the time.
All right.
And I think, the which is probably tried at this point, but the kind of the intervention is teaching the guy to ask, do you want solutions or do you want me just to listen? Right. And teaching the woman to be okay with that ask. I think when we talk a lot about what men need to change, but there's also kind of the shadow side of femininity where a lot of female identified individuals, like they think that guys should just know all these rules, or they think that because we need to be overt about something explicit, like, hey, do you want advice or do you want me to listen? It kind of cheapens it, right? It makes it less romantic or less magical or less natural or less real, right? I think there's some conditioning there. So like both people need to move towards the center of like the man needs to ask and the woman needs to be okay that if he asks, it doesn't mean that he doesn't care or that he doesn't know what to do, right? It's that he's trying to communicate with you. And it is, I think it's really two different languages and we're trying to figure out a bridge between those two languages.
Right. Yeah. Oh boy. This is fascinating stuff. And to maybe switch gears a little bit, in your work with other therapists, what sort of things do you find that people are needing the most help with?
Yeah, so as therapists, I think the big thing that I find, and we'll focus more on women therapists because we're kind of chatting about them. I think it's really finding a voice, which again is I think the work of women now in modern culture, right? Is to find your voice and be unique and be okay being unique. Right. And knowing that you might get haters, you might get negative criticism, especially if you're posting online, you're going to get negative people first because the internet sucks. But what I see with a lot of women therapists that are struggling to make it in private practice is that they're too general. They haven't taken enough risks. And if you go to a directory like Psychology Today, right, and you plug in your zip code and what you're going to see, and you made this point earlier, you're going to see basically like white women aged like 35 to 55. And if you scroll through, if you imagine you're a client, they all look the same. And if you click on their profiles, all of the profiles read the same. If you click on their websites, all of their websites are the same. And as a client, you're not going to know who to pick. So I think women struggle in private practice because they don't do enough to differentiate themselves, which is big work. I mean, it's big personal work to really, find your voice, find your creative center, and take a swing, right? Take a swing towards a niche, towards an aesthetic, towards a different type of picture, a different type of language, to take a risk and stand out, knowing that there will often be negative stuff. I mean, I can say a little bit from my experience. When I decided to spec into men and say, hey, I'm working with men's mental health, I got so much hate mail. I got so much hate mail from some of my colleagues, some of my professors that taught me, right? Some random people online, right? Saying like, you're misogynist. What about women? Are you like saying you're not going to work with half the population? And what I would say is like, look, I'm not anti-women. I'm just working towards men. And I have a wonderful, robust referral network of wonderful therapists that specialize in women's issues. So when a woman does contact me, they have a plethora of options to choose from. I'm not like denying them. I'm actually getting them a better resource, Right. But when you decide to take a bold swing, people are going to have feelings about it. But what I want to say to your listeners is like, those are the critics. Those are the people in the stands, not in the field. So you just being in the field, taking a swing, standing out is really, really challenging. And I think what is necessary, especially if you want a cash pay private practice, right? If you want to be that kind of like cream of the crop, pinnacle version of a practice, it takes being bold.
Right. Yeah, I would totally agree. And that's a theme people hear from me all the time is the importance of developing a niche and really, as you repeating what you said, and as I like to say in the South, preaching to the choir, but I mean, you really do need to stand out and really define what is what is it that you see yourself specializing in? And also, it makes you a better therapist because you're probably doing stuff that you enjoy doing by doing that. And casting a broad net catches very few fish, but going after specific fish is much more successful.
Absolutely. Yeah. It helps you, figure out what your learning plan is going to be as far as CEUs, if you want to pick up another certification or whatever, right? Like it helps you kind of focus who you are and what your professional identity is going to be.
Right.
And like I said, my company is called Men's Therapy Online. I have women that reach out that say, "Hey, I think you'd be a good fit for my son, but can you see me?" Because I think a lot of people are afraid that like if they're too niche, they're not going to get anybody else, and that is just not the case. Like people are gonna if there's something they can push off of or ping off of or relate to, they're gonna have an opinion, and then they're gonna want to connect with you.
Sure. Well, Mark, I know we've got to be respectful of our time, and I know we could hang out all day long and just have lots of fun with this topic. But tell folks how they can get in touch with you and a little more about what you do as far as consulting and your practice and all of that.
Great. Yeah. So everything for my practice is at Men's Therapy Online. The URL is menstherapy.online. It's a great resource for your clients. Like I said, we have a ton of free stuff on there. The podcast is entirely free. We have like hundreds of blogs at this point. We have free online courses. We have free Slack community. There's so many places they can plug in. And then if they want to work with us, they can join a men's group. They can work with one of our couples counselors or individuals. For therapists out there, I highly recommend the men's groups. It's a great adjunct to what you're doing. So we would collaborate with you. We would sign ROIs. I talk with my therapist every month about their client, and then every quarter once it gets more stable. So we have a really strong collaboration strategy. And I think most men should be in a men's group. So especially if you are a female therapist, I think having a guy around a male therapist in group and other men that have been in therapy can be really, really helpful. And it might propel your work to the next level. As far as consultation, just email me directly. It's Marc, M-A-R-C, at menstherapy.online. I don't really advertise it at this point. It's more kind of like word of mouth, but I'm happy to chat with you and answer any questions you might have about business growth or business development.
Sure. And we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary for people to get to that easily. Well, Marc, I'm so glad we got to talk, and hopefully we'll have another conversation before too long.
Happy to come back on the show.
Well, a big thanks to Marc for being on the podcast, and I hope this has been helpful for you in just thinking about the way that we work with our male clients and how it can be different at times. And also, I'd love for you to check out Marc's podcast, the Men's Therapy Podcast. It's a good podcast, and Marc does a great job with that. And also check out his website. It's a really cool website. I was looking at it here right before I recorded the intros. And yeah, it's a cool website. So be sure and check it out. And it's onlinetherapyformen.com. So check that out. And also just want to say a big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and absolutely just impressed with the way they're always improving that platform. They come out with new updates just about every week of just different things and different tweaks that they do based on the feedback they get from their customers. So be sure and check them out. You can go to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and use the promo code Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. So be sure and check it out. And also, if you're interested in working with me, again, go to my website, practiceoftherapy.com, and you can find out about all the ways in which I work with people, both individually and in groups. So be sure and check it out. And we've got a lot of great guests lined up for you. Looking forward to you hearing from them. So take care, folks. And I believe this episode is coming out sometime around Thanksgiving. So if we have had this episode after Thanksgiving, I hope it was a good one. If you're getting ready to start it, I hope you have a good, happy Thanksgiving. So take care, folks. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. And to find more great podcasts like this one, please visit the PsychCraft Network at psychcraftnetwork.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. And if you need help in these areas, be sure to find the right professional to help you with these things.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.